Miles, this is a new book. It just came in the mail. This is the first day that anybody could read it who bought it online. So, Ruth Soukup, well, first of all, the title is How Big Is Your Brave? And the author's name is Ruth Soukup, illustrated by Alison Friend. But what's fun is that Grandma has been reading Ruth's blog for quite a long time, and then I found out that she had written a book for kids, and so I bought it. So, How Big Is Your Brave? There's the sky and all the planets and the stars. How big is your brave? Can you see the stars at your house? I know you live in the city. Zippy flopped back and looked up at the stars and the deep, dark sky. I wonder what it's like up there, Zippy said. If I had just one wish, it would be to hop on a rocket and blast off for outer space. Vroom! Not me, said her brother Gus. I would never go so far from my garden, but when you blast off, I'll cheer you on. They have a garden. The next day, Zippy and Gus went into town. They passed by a crowd gathered around a sign. The sign said, Space Camp. Launch your own rocket ship with ribbons for best in space. Zippy's heart soared. Ooh, that would be so fun, she said. Sign up, Gus urged. Zippy shook her ears. No, 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 no. Look at all those big critters. I can't compete with them. Going to space is your big dream, Gus said. Wouldn't space camp be a good step, like planting the first seed in a garden? Maybe, Zippy said, but it looks way too scary. She's afraid of other people or creatures. Back home, Zippy couldn't stop thinking about space camp. She really wanted to go. But when she thought of those big, smart-looking critters signing up, her whiskers shook. Would they laugh at her? Would they think a little bunny had no business aiming for the stars? Zippy looked up. The first stars were just beginning to shine in the wide sky. Oh, how she wished to someday soar near them. Suddenly, Zippy remembered something her grandma used to say. That's your why. Must be bigger than your fear. She stood up and brushed the dirt from her paws. She'd made her decision. If she wanted to go to space, she had to learn everything she could. Scared or not, she belonged at space camp. Your why must be bigger than your fear. This is a good thing for grown-ups to think about, too. Your why must be bigger than your fear. Welcome to space camp. Zippy's whiskers trembled when she arrived for the first day of camp. She huddled next to her mother as the other campers ran about, talking and playing. I keep telling myself to be brave, she whispered, but I'm still scared. Mom gave Zippy's back a pat. Being brave doesn't mean you're never scared, she said. Sometimes courage means taking an action even when you feel afraid. Brave is still doing it. Zippy watched as the two campers began to build a model of the solar system. She took a deep breath and hopped over to them. I can make Saturn, she offered in a squeaky voice as she molded clay into a ball and cut out paper rings. Zippy's nervousness vanished once she got busy. Action is the antidote to fear. So if you get busy, it's not quite so scary. Every morning, the campers learned about space and stars and planets and astronauts. Every afternoon, they worked on their rocket ships, and as her rocket ship grew, so did Zippy's confidence. Before long, she was answering questions, asking for help, and making new friends. She wasn't so afraid anymore. At home, Zippy read books about famous astronauts, Space camp seems like a lot of work, Gus remarked. I'm just reading these for fun, Zippy said. Once camp is over, I'm starting a space club with 2 of my new friends. Then will you be a real astronaut? Gus wondered. Zippy smiled. Not yet. Becoming an astronaut takes a lot of studying and hard work, she explained. That's why we're forming the club. We're going to learn as much as we can together. Our camp counselor says it will be easier to keep our eyes on the stars if we help each other. She says it's something called accountability. Everyone needs accountability. Somebody else who knows what you're trying to do. After space camp, Zippy carried her rocket ship home to show Gus. He was busy setting up a juice stand to test out his latest concoctions. What's he going to sell? Gus's famous juice. Berry Beet Blaster and Carrot Tea Creation. Juice to sell. Wow, your rocket ship sparkles in the sun, said Gus as he swooped the rocket through the air. Careful, said Zippy suddenly. Gus tripped and crash, splash. Zippy's rocket ship landed in the dirt, crumpled and covered with juice. I'm sorry, Gus said. My perfect rocket ship, Zippy cried. It's ruined. The juice is ruined. The rocket's ruined. At dinner, Zippy nibbled on lettuce and looked sadly at her cracked, messy rocket ship. Mom offered to help her fix it. Dad did too. Gus volunteered to repaint it. Zippy shook her ears. There's no point. I'm not going to launch day tomorrow, she said. I'm done with space camp. Dad looked over at the rocket. Such a beautiful creation, and now it's broken, he said. Unfortunately, we can't change that. Zippy slumped. No kidding. But you can change one thing, Dad continued, and that's what you're going to do about it. Bad things happen, and when they happen to you, only you can decide how to react. You can choose to give up or choose to keep going. It's all up to you. Zippy nodded. She knew what she had to do. Give up or keep going. Zippy curled up in a room next to her books. She looked at all the pictures of astronauts who came before her. I guess they didn't give up easily, so I won't either, she thought. Time to get to work. The only thing you can control is you. That's the biggest thing to know. Zippy found some thick paper and created new fins for her rocket ship. You could paint it silver, Dad suggested. That would add some sparkle to your ship. Zippy munched on a carrot. I have another idea, she said. What are they doing? It's orange. Zippy arrived for launch day, nervous but excited. She was happy to see her space camp friends and admire their rocket ships. They were all beautiful, but Zippy's swirling purple and orange design really stood out. It's lovely, the teacher said. Were you inspired by the colors of Jupiter? Zippy smiled at Gus. Nope, I was thinking about my brother's garden. He grows the best beets and carrots. Well, that explains the name, the teacher said with a laugh. The critters launched their rocket ships one by one. Zippy's Veggie Varoom sailed to second place. And thanks to her unique paint job, she received a blue ribbon for the most creative design. Space Camp, most creative rocket ship design. That evening, Zippy and Gus flopped back and looked at the stars. Do you still want to hop on a rocket ship and blast off for outer space someday? Gus asked. More than ever, Zippy said. I wish you would come with me. Only if the rocket ship has a garden, Gus said. Great idea, said Zippy. Astronauts need lots of food in space. How big is your brave? I think Ruth made a nice book. I like it. How big is your brave? Ruth Soukup.